All right, thanks for coming, guys. We're going to go ahead and get started. On behalf of BMAN, we're really excited to see you guys come here. If you remember, the first week we had Dr. Dennis Pruitt come in. He gave us an introduction talking about the kind of stats that we see in terms of male involvement on college campuses around the U.S. And then a couple weeks ago, we had Sammy Rhodes and John Ludovina come and talk about men and women, kind of more theory and then also practice right in time for Valentine's Day, which was fun. A couple quick announcements. Our website launches tomorrow, and there you can find not only links to all of the lectures recorded, but you can also find all of our events for the upcoming several weeks. So please go to the website, visit that. If you can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, that'd also be super helpful. And this is our president next semester, Daniel Meyer. He's going to talk about the topic, and thanks again for coming, guys.
All right, guys, like Ruth said, my name's Daniel, and I'm actually with Cameron. We're just going to give a brief kind of introduction to our topic and our speaker. For our topic, we chose toughness and tenderness. And tenderness is maybe a strange word, maybe one you don't use when we talk about masculinity. But it's something we think is appropriate. And kind of what we're trying to address is this idea that being tough is masculine, but the opposite isn't. So that's kind of just the basic framework that we're in. And yeah, Cameron, just introduce us to Mr. McClendon.
Well, when Dan brought up this topic, I loved it. I was like, this is something that a lot of people, I think, get wrong in many ways. And I said, who would be a really good person for this topic? And I was like, well, I need someone who is, or we need someone who is demonstrated that he's an individual who doesn't back down from a challenge and that is also kind towards other people, even in the hardest of situations. And I think that O'Shawn McClendon is definitely that person. So with a round of applause, I'd like to welcome to the stage.
Good evening. Much as Cameron said, I'm O'Shawn McClendon. I'm a native of Alabama. I retired here after the Marine Corps several years ago. I'm with me tonight. I have my lovely wife, Tracy. She's pretty much everywhere you see me, you'll see her. For the most part, I have two sons. One is attending school down in Auburn. I know this is Gamecock country, but we're Alabamians, so he's down in Auburn right now. He's a freshman at Auburn. And my oldest son, he went through Troy. Pretty much, I want to give a PowerPoint going. I'm going to go through a few things real quickly, which I won't take up too much of your time this evening, but I do want to have an opportunity here to share some information. The first thing I'd like to address, if you don't mind, I'm going to stand up here out the slide. First thing I'd like to address is the opportunity to think the young men who are running this program, Be a Man, is absolutely, I'm excited by that. Be a Man, their vision for you all, the vision for the school, Be a Man at USC, I think it's awesome. It should be a Man in South Carolina, Be a Man everywhere. It's an awesome opportunity. I thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the work they're doing. They have a website. They're on the internet's launching here tomorrow, the website. The other thing these young men do, they're working hard. I mean, Cameron come out, see me, him and his colleagues, say, hey, could you come over and speak at the school? I love their mission. We're talking about masculinity. Tonight I hope to show you a difference. My topic is toughness and tenderness, but I'm not necessarily going to get into not a comparison and a contrast. I'm just going to show you how it kind of works out, the way I see toughness and tenderness. The biggest part that I want to address tonight on toughness and tenderness is how it applies to my life. There's a lot of peer-reviewed articles, scholarly papers written, and things like that. But when Cameron said, hey, there's no boundaries that you have to stay within as far as what you're going to cover. Here's the topic. Here's what I want you to cover. And you don't have to do X, Y, and Z, dot, dot, dot. Just cover it. He said, I consider you a man. Fortunately, I taught Cameron for several years. I was Strong Thurman High School. And Jessica, some of my students, it kind of feel like I'm back in class. But it's good to see these youngsters are doing well here at USC. So we're going to move on. So first of all, I'll tell you, relax. I know you've probably been in class all day, have classes, and say, oh my God, is this going to be death by PowerPoint? We're going to get this guy going to read us 1,000. That's not the case. It's mostly to keep me on track because I'll get the ramble. And the kids will tell you that I've taught before, I can get off track. It kind of helped me keep focused and keep us moving along and staying on timeline. All right, the 2 points I'm going to cover tonight, obviously I've talked about, it's going to be toughness and tenderness. I'm going to kind of give you a definition of them, but not necessarily what you will find on the website or Wikipedia or wherever you may get the definition. I'm going to talk to you about how it applies to me. in my life and how I think it'll benefit you. Some quotes from both sides of it, some sayings that I've heard in relation to both of them, and some of you probably have heard most of them. And then I'm going to give you my point of view and also some examples. Now, when I was taught, I introduced, asked to come over by Cameron. The thing he said, hey, it's about be a man, and men are going to be there. So I was kind of gearing the topic and my information toward men on campus. But nonetheless, I'm grateful that the women are here. I brought my wife with me. Anytime you find a man worth his salt, there's going to be definitely great women around him. And if you have brothers or fellow students, you can always, the information is transferable. You say, hey, you know, I learned something, I heard something, and just give you a depth and a broad, and you know, that's the whole thing we have going on with college. Here we go, toughness. Mental toughness helps a person deal with difficult situations, able to withstand a great strain without tearing or breaking, strong and resilient, physically hardy, rugged, severe, harsh. When you think about toughness, those words come to mind. You know, I pulled some things out, some definitions that I thought had been applicable in my life. When I think about it, if I'm thinking about severe or harsh, maybe like up north, the weather can be tough. If you live in the northern area, that's kind of a tough thing. Obviously, physically hardy, rugged, could be a terrain type thing. Mental toughness, you have to have mental toughness. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but I'm a retired Marine, 20 years in the Marine Corps, so that was one thing where, you know, I really learned to be tough, you know, serving those 20 years in the Marine Corps, and that was mental toughness more than physical. Here's some of the quotes that I wanted to share with you. One of them was, you've got to be tough. Mike Dick, anybody ever heard of Mike Dick here? Football coach, great. Also, tough times create tough people. Richard Grimes says, tough guys don't dance. You had better believe it. Now, I remember that growing up, you know, as a young man, it was like, hey, guys, man, stay on the wall. We was all cool. You know, anybody going to dance? We too tough to dance. You know, we just didn't have talent. That was all. Nonetheless. But I did when someone challenges you, fight back. Be tough. Just get them. Just go and get them. Donald Trump. And we all know he's a very successful businessman. He's a very tough guy as well. All right, some sayings I've heard. Some of you may have heard these sayings. It says, be tough. Be tough. Don't cry. Be a man. Be tough. Stop acting like a girl. Man up. Be tough. Stop whining. That doesn't hurt. Be tough. No matter what. Don't show any weakness. The first one, you know, boys don't cry. Be a man. Who've heard that before? Anybody ever heard that? Any boys ever heard that? This whole idea is where this whole toughness thing comes from. Stop acting like a girl. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. I have 4 older brothers, so you can imagine as they would torture me, they say, hey, stop crying, be tough. Because they didn't want mom or dad to deal with them, but you know, that was the deal. All right, basically kind of a male indoctrination to the male cultural beliefs of how we come with toughness. Like I said, it's family. As a young man growing up in Alabama, my brother would always, you know, we grew up watching our wrestling, and we watched it on Saturday and stuff, and they want to try all the hopes they saw on TV. They want to try them out on me. You know, they put me in the chokehold or something, you know, and they choke me. Hey, stop crying. You know, be tough. Don't be crying. Mama's going to come here and get us. Those type things, you know, all the time. Teaching me, you know, hey, be tough, be tough. So I got indoctrinated into that idea, you have to be tough. My friends in high school, when I was about, most of you males, age 15, 18, I rode with a couple guys. We thought we were tough. I mean, my wife's my high school girlfriend. She can tell you we hung out in groups and gangs. We rode motorcycles. It wasn't Crips and Blood. That wasn't around back then. At least it was. I don't know. From Alabama. But we thought we were tough. Yeah, so, you know, I don't know. They may have been around out west. But we thought we were tough. And we were that type of groups that ran. So everybody, if you hung out with us, you had to be tough in those days. We thought. Peers. The worst thing is society as a whole. Society as a whole breeds that toughness that we get the idea. If you're a man, you have to be tough. If you're a man, you have to do certain things. If you're a man, you should not cry. That becomes part of our society. It gets deeply embedded inside you and you start to believe it, and that's what we think of toughness. But as a man, actually, anyone, that's not actually being tough. Here's some of the turning points for me when you're talking about toughness. When I joined the Marine Corps, I showed up at Paris Island, South Carolina in 1985. I get off the bus, I think I'm tough. I'm a high school football player, I think I'm a pretty tough guy. You know, I go in there, when that drill instructor stepped on that bus and said, shut your mouth, I ran off, get off my bus. I almost lost my mind. So, oh my God, this guy's tough. After all these years of myself thinking I'm tough, we get inside the squad bay. I remember the first night landing in Iraq, and you know, I'm just crying and bawling, God, what did I get myself into? You know, I said, well, my friends saw me now, they wouldn't think I'm quite so tough. But that was part of it. But the turning point for me was realizing that These guys were tough. They was tough as physical could be. But they cared and cared about us so much, and the things they did for us, I started seeing the world differently. Just hollering and screaming and yelling, those are things that I saw. I thought, I'm going to be tough. I'm going to be a Marine. I'm going to be a drill instructor. That was absolutely not the point. When I got married, turning point, my wife and I have been married 26 years. One of the good things that she taught me about being tough is definitely, I've never put my hands on my wife. But being tough, to be there for her through tough times, difficult times, being that sounding board, someone she talks to. A lot of my friends ask, what you doing this weekend? I'm hanging out with the wife. That doesn't sound tough. The guys say, we're going to a sports bar, we're going to watch a game. You know, I say, hey, no, guys, I'm going to hang out with my wife. Those things made me tough as an individual. It changed the kind of person I was. Having kids was a turning point. I have 2 sons. They're 4 years apart. All through life, I was starting to teach my sons the way I grew up. Don't cry, don't do this, whatever, you know, be a man, grow up. But as I got to know those young boys, developed a relationship where I could talk with them, communicate with them. I could still be that dad. I could be a man. I could be a Marine, but I still could show a tender side, even in the toughness. They saw me as the exterior. They saw me as a tough guy because I was in the Marine Corps. You know, I'm always running around the house hollering and yelling. But those boys actually started to soften my heart, my compassion, and my love for them. Some examples of toughness for you guys here on the college campus would be stuff like obeying your parents even though they're not here. My son's away at college. You know, a tough thing to do is to attend class. A tough thing to do is to do your schoolwork. A tough thing is to be involved in something positive. Even though your parents aren't there, that's a sign of being tough. That's a different toughness other than the physical toughness that we think about. Honoring your word, that's tough. If you tell someone, I'm going to do something, I'm going to be there, you should be able to honor your word. You at your level, starting out, developing your word. These are your colleagues, these are people that are with you in your cohort in college. They're going to remember things about you. You know, this guy is a pretty tough guy. If he says something, you can pretty much believe it's going to happen. Respecting women and their rights. That's tough. A lot of guys don't want to do that. If you talk about women, I know I was a male your age, you know, you always want to have a bragging point. You know, you don't ever want to say, hey, you know, something really great or nice about a girl. Say, I took a girl out to the club, you know, and da-da-da, you know, all the other side, the negative stuff that men say because it makes them sound tough. How about saying some nice things to a lady? You know, treating a woman the way you would like to see your sister or your mother treated. That's tough on young guys to do that because it takes away from your imaging. Opening doors, pull out a chair, those type things, that is pretty much faded away. You know, we don't see, I know I work at a high school. Guys go down the hallway, and they're going through, it could be females, you know, 2 steps behind them. They don't even turn around. They see it and they know it. They're not tough enough to do the right thing because it's not cool. I see guys that close their arm and jump through the door. Hey, if people open the door for me, I don't hold no doors. I ain't opening no doors. That's the wrong idea. The right thing to do as a young man at your level is, you know, doing the right thing, opening doors, pulling out chairs, those type of things are so important. Standing up to bullying. I don't know about the college level, but at the high school level, you know, that's running rampant. You know, whether it's cyberbullying, whether it's bullying in the hallway, bullying is a big part of the thing. A tough kid, a tough person understands that you stand up to bullying. Maybe you don't want to deal with that person one-on-one because it could be conflict, but you should be the person that would report it or say something to someone else about something such as that. That's a sign of being tough, not the physical toughness. Respecting others and their property. You know, I don't know about here at college, at your level, but at high school, we have a lot of people don't respect each other's property. The locker rooms, kids lose cell phones, they lose iPads, you name it, it gets lost. The tough thing to do is to not bother others' property, respect others' things. Are you tough enough to do that? Getting involved in positive organizations like Be a Man. You know, sometimes people will label you. They'll say things to you, you know, hey, that's not for tough guys. Tough guys don't join no club like that, whatever. This is a positive, tough, a thing that's tough on a young man to do. Speaking from an age of 45, I think it's great. I think it's a wonderful thing. But sometime at 18 and 19, it may not seem like something that you think is a tough thing. I mean, something that you want to do as a young man. All right, the flip side, tenderness. It's a state of unusual sensitivity, easily crushed, frail, delicate, characterized by or expressing gentle emotions, loving, giving to sympathy or sentimentally assault. Here's the deal. No man want to be described like this. Like, no man. Even if he's that way, he doesn't want you to tell his friends or anybody, yeah, my man is frail and delicate. He doesn't want that word to get out. You know, he doesn't want to say, hey, you know, he's emotional and loving. He doesn't want to have, because in society, we've got to the point where if you say these things about a man, we automatically will stereotype. Some quotes I saw on tenderness was, a mother's arms are made tenderness, and children sleep silently in them, by Victor Hugo. There is no charm equal to tenderness of heart, Jane Austen, and tenderness is a virtue. Again, things men don't want said about them. Tenderness is for girls. Who've heard that? Any guys ever heard that before? Tenderness is for girls. It says, you are tender like a baby's body. What man wants to hear that? You don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that. Don't show your tender side. It's a sign of weakness. Who thinks that? Anybody? All right. Here we go. Same thing. The same indoctrination to that whole culture of tenderness and what we believe and what we think about being tender. Family. You know, I can remember growing up, my brothers, I'm riding a bicycle or something. If I fall off the bike, I get up and I got a scrape on my knee, and they're like, hey, man, don't be crying. Don't be whining. Don't be tender like a girl. I'm like, I just fell. I'm hurt. Get up. Stop whining. Friends were the same way. You know, we're rolling friends. We're playing football. You just got knocked flat on your back. You know, they're trying to give you oxygen. You're all right. Don't be tender, man. Don't show any weakness. Get up, dog. You're going to be all right. Like, I am dying here. But that was part of it, you know. You didn't want to be tender. You didn't want to be seen in a tender light. Because we were culturally put that way, because peers and society at large tells us what tenderness is, what toughness is, and we believe it. It becomes a cultural thing as we begin to believe it. All right, same thing. That was some turning points in my life with tenderness was in the Marine Corps. Things happened while I was in the Marine Corps that actually, I had a young guy as a Marine Corps officer. You know, I'd have a guy come to me and say, hey, you know what? My wife is sick, this is that. You know, do I have to go on deployment? It was tough to tell him, no, you don't have to go. You can stay home with your family. People say, that's soft. They're being tender. He's a Marine. Make him suck it up and go. But I'm thinking, I have a wife. I have a family. You have to have a tender side. It's easy to get away with, hey, we're Marines. Tell them to suck it up. Get over it. You got to get tough. You know, turning points for me when I became a Marine Corps leader, having to show that kind of compassion, having tender thoughts and feelings for other people, that became part of it. In marriage, the same thing. You know, I mean, my wife and I, we've gone through so many different things. I mean, she's been my anchor, my cornerstone, that helped me turn a lot of corners in what I thought about tenderness. Having kids was most important. Having little kids, you know, I grew up telling my sons the same thing in the earlier years. Hey, stop crying, don't whine. You go to your mama. That's what I think about. These are my sons. Why am I acting this way? Because society had culturally brought me into a place where I believe that, hey, if a kid is crying or whining, you know, he's being soft, don't bring that noise in here with me. Until I grew and talked to my wife and started to develop, I realized, hey, some of the turning point, having these boys, they need me to have a tender side in my life. Some examples was saying kind words to people even when they aren't kind to you. That is tough. But that is a sign of being tender. You know, someone may not be having a great day. Can you say something nice to someone? Will they say something nice back to you? Maybe not. But that's a sign of being tender in heart and in spirit, not necessarily frail and emotional and all that, but being tender in heart. Doing something for someone else and not expecting anything in return. What if Mr. Fulford calls Mr. Brewer at 2 in the morning and say, hey, I'm down here to cook, I get my favorite shake, and my car won't start. He says, hey, you know what, I'll come do it, but you got to get me one of those strawberry shakes on the way. You know, having a tender heart, doing things for people sometimes and needing nothing in return. How about sending your mom, sister, or girlfriend a rose or flower just because? Just because. It has nothing to do with other than just because. You would send them a flower or a rose. Don't let it be Valentine's Day or birthday. That gives a male justification to be tough. I'm doing this, man, it's just Valentine's Day, so I got to go and do this. How about doing it on Thursday in the middle of March? You just do it because you love them. That's a tender side of it. They see you differently. Tutoring a classmate who may be struggling. You know, I talk to my son. He's down in engineering school in Auburn. I can barely talk to him. He's like, Dad, you know, I'm struggling right now. I'm in tutoring. I'm in the library. But he has classmates and guys that he hang out with that are focused on their education. And, you know, that may seem like a tender thing for guys to do, but he understands the bigger picture in 3.5 years when he walks across that stage. How about telling your dad, brother, granddad, I love you? I was a guy who wouldn't do stuff like that. My father is dead and gone. My oldest brother, who I mimicked most of my life after, was a Vietnam vet. You know, just a few years ago he passed. I look back thinking, you know, I wasn't tender enough at the time to say, hey, Dad, you know, I love you. I never wrapped my arms around. And that sounds kind of cruel, but it's the truth. Because I came up in that culture of toughness in a time when guys weren't doing that kind of stuff. You look weak. I had 3 older brothers. Don't be hugging and kissing on Dad. That makes you look weak. That makes you look tender. That's just kind of the way it was. All right. A relationship between tenderness and toughness. From a Marine perspective, this is where I really got the big picture as a Marine Corps officer. I was a casualty officer at my last unit. After I'd done my time over in Iraq and I've come back, I became the casualty officer. To get a call from headquarters Marine Corps says, hey, take this letter to this family house and tell them that their son is never coming home again. And to knock on that door and see that dad who was a sheriff stand there and I'm in full dress blues, and to see him buckle down and break in front of me, I knew right then and there what he was going through. I could feel what he was going through. That changed my heart so much. That's the relationship. Here I was, a tough Marine, standing at the door, Marine Corps officer, but I felt so tender inside. I felt so sentimental inside. Standing at that grave site, and I've got a flag standing given to the mother saying, on behalf of a grateful nation, the United States Marine Corps, we present this to you. Knowing she can't get it back. The whole family sitting there hurting. Those were tender moments that I felt inside of myself that actually beyond started to change my total existence in the Marine Corps. I saw life through a different set of binoculars. Just that point in time. That's when the toughness of being a U.S. Marine, being a man, and the tenderness of being a caring and compassionate person had to come together as one. That's when that relationship with the things in which society had told me, you got to be tough to say, you know, you got to suck it up, Mom. You know, your son's a warrior. He got killed. Thank you. That doesn't work when you're talking about human. You know, you got to have that tender side. It didn't bother me standing there with tears flowing down my eyes, giving her a flag, because I knew she'd never see that 21-year-old young man again. And I had a son just like that at home who's coming behind me. So you see where the two begin to work together. With my friends, guys I grew up with, who we thought we were all so tough, hanging out and doing things, one of the biggest pieces that I learned was a couple of my friends who went through several divorces and separations. We were guys who was tough as tough can be. The guy gave me a call in the middle of the night and said, hey man, my wife's not going through a separation, we're finna get a divorce, I'm finna lose my family. You know, he didn't want to hear from me, oh man, whatever, let her go get you another girl. That's what we used to be. You know, the tender side of me said to him, you know what man, I'm hurt. What can I do for you? When can I see you? When can we get together? When we talk through this? Is there any way you guys can work that out? Just years before, because of society, what we thought about toughness and what we thought about tenderness would have never brought us to that point. But we would have been able to share those moments in a conversation where we weren't judging each other. It was right there at that point, the most tender part of my life, and being able to say something to him in a positive way and change his life. And you know, lastly here, tenderness and toughness come together. As my wife is here with me today, 3 years ago, and she called me at work, hey, you know what, I just got bad news from the doctor. I have cancer. It almost changed, it's melting me. I'm a dad, I'm a Marine, I'm standing there, you know, 225 pounds, there's nothing I can do for my wife. She's in a situation. My wife, son, and I, we're standing there, we live our life anchored and based in faith, and we're standing in a circle, and we're praying at that point in time, and I'm the only one in the circle breaking down and crying. My sons are good to go, and I'm breaking down. But I'm thinking as dad, as a husband, that's nothing I can do. Everything I learned about being tough had no relevance in my life at that moment. The most tender part of my life was right there. That was when toughness and tenderness became one. That was a long 3 years. Thank God she's here still with me today and everything is going well. But the toughness that I learned, that I went through, and the tenderness that was inside of me, the two came together as one. That's what I'm saying to you as a young man here and as individuals, but certainly as to be a man and young men, you've got to find that place. You've got to find that space in your life where the two come together. You can't be extremely tough. The toughest of tough guys, you're going to see that tender moment. You're going to have that sickness, that death. You're going to have that time when it's out of your control. If you haven't learned how to master your tenderness and incorporate the two to become one, you'll never be a whole individual. You got to get to that point. That's when you'll become rounded. When this gentleman gave me an opportunity to speak, I was like, well, you know what, I appreciate that, and I want to be able to speak about things and scenarios and stories that are relevant to my life. So I don't have to remember the story, I don't have to think about it because I've lived those stories. I've had an opportunity to see toughness and tenderness come together as one. I had an opportunity to see the things I heard about toughness to not be true. As a male, you're going to live in a world of stereotypes. As young men, you have an image you have to uphold. I remember being that 18 to 22-year-old young man. It is hard to not carry yourself as a tough guy. Everything we do, everything we wear, everywhere we go, for most men, is geared around trying to be tough, trying to be cool. No one wants to associate themselves with tenderness. But I'm telling you, it's a big part of your life. Once you put the two together, you'll become one. Basically, I just try to kind of share my scenario, what I think toughness and tenderness are, as they are applicable to life every day, not necessarily what's in the textbook, but how they've been real in my life, how I've come to realize the differences in the two and how they merge as one. Pretty much, you know, I'm kind of off my soapbox unless, you know, I open up the floor if anyone has any questions for me about anything I've covered, anything I've talked about. I'm open for questions at this time. No? Yes, sir.
How did you instill the sense of toughness and tenderness with your two sons? The reason I'm asking, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and so I'm like thinking of, you know, having sons. Like, how in the world would I instill this to a son? I don't know, or how I would teach my daughter to. I mean, she's 4 now, so I'm not talking about boys at all. But
Right.
Like, you know, 50 years, and she's like boys, like how I.
Well, I mean, to answer the question, how I instilled in my boys, the number one thing I did was modeling behavior. That's the number one answer I can give you off the top of my head. There's many steps along the way, but I try to always be that dad that was there. I try to always have that compassion. I look back in my past and the things that caused me to have my one-sided view of thought, whether it's about toughness or tenderness. I knew the things that basically corrupted my thinking. And I tried to make sure to never model those behavior. If you fell and got hurt, you ride your bicycle, get up. You probably are hurt. We deal with that as a kid that's hurt at the moment and not suck it up, be tough, stop crying, you know, get away from that. That's tough. And especially having been a Marine and been a Marine drill instructor, you know, you kind of get tunnel vision and you get in that zone and it's hard to come home, you take your hat and belt off and now I'm dad. You know, and then in a matter of 8 hours, 10 hours, I'm back on the depot, I'm a drill instructor. But that was what, you know, when my wife came, you know, she filled those gaps. But the number one answer I would say would be modeling the behavior of how I treat my wife. You know, we don't yell and fuss and curse, go off on each other in front of the kids. So they kind of learn to healthy respect for women in regards to that. Not that we don't disagree, but we don't do it in front of the kids. You know what I'm saying? They never see me put my hands on her, those type of things. So I don't know if that answers your question. Yes, sir.
You mentioned while you're in the Marines, opportunities that you had to be tender towards other people. Was there ever anyone in the Marines, especially when you first got there, that kind of modeled that behavior to you to show you like tough Marines, but they also had a tender side?
Oh man, great question. And the answer is that gentleman was Master Sergeant Walls. He changed my life. He changed my life. He would bring young men. We would get our study material. He would bring us to his house. He would prepare us for the next promotion. He would teach us all Marine Corps history. Things we already know. You would see this Master Sergeant, a Vietnam vet, you would see him at work. Like, you know, this guy, you know, you just kind of like, there's Master Sergeant, I'm going this way. And then you kind of avoid this guy, you know, I'm going to go the other way, there comes Master Sergeant. But it came down to a point where he was so compassionate, so tender toward our success. He knew his time was coming to an end in the Marine Corps. He would teach you, show you, mentor you, guide you, and that actually not only helped me, but it instilled in me what later became success for many of the Marines who came under me. After I became a warrant officer, I brought several other Marines along to officer status, and it was because of that same thing, that compassion, that tenderness he showed me that I never would have imagined. Seeing him on a poster, you know, you're like, I'm not dealing with that guy. You know, kids used to treat me that way. They would come into my space, my office, I had a Marine drill poster and smoke it. I'm looking all mean. But that was a job. That's who I was. But that wasn't the person. I was a much better person. I think I was a much better person than that. You know, yeah. Any other questions? The ladies first. Yes, ma'am.
Having been in the Marines, I grew up in Beaufort, so I know Paris Island pretty well, and I've encountered a lot of the new Marines as they get to go out into Beaufort, and they kind of make a fool of themselves a lot of times. What would you say to those Marines if you saw them out in public acting like big jerks?
What you're seeing is youth at its best. Not necessarily just being a Marine, but yes, being a Marine comes with, there's a certain level of ego, I guess, that comes with it, just because of the nature of what it is. You know, I mean, you watch commercials now, and they may say, you know, Marines run toward tyranny, you know, whatever, and everyone, they buy into that whole concept. But it again, the society selling toughness. Toughness sells, you know what I mean? It's just like, you know, sex sells with women, toughness sells with me. You know, any muscular magazines, you know, recruiter come to you, he's gonna say, be a Marine, you know, we're the toughest ones out there. You're a human being, you're just like anybody else, a bullet would take you down, you know. It's all the same, but it's all image. But for those young men, the only thing that really probably could help them is just it's time, you know, maturity comes with time, situations that they would encounter throughout their years. I mean, because if I sit and tell you, you know, the things I'm telling you today at 45 years old were relevant when I was 25, I'd just be simply lying to you. You know, I mean, I went through that phase. But the key here today, the takeaway for the young men, especially anyone, is as you leave, you know, the sooner it's like investment. It's like money. And if you start saving $1, you know, a week right now, and you finish 50 years from now, it's going to pay off in great dividends. It seems like nothing now. So if you take a nugget, you may not agree with everything I say, you may not appreciate everything. If you can take something away, and every time you come to another Be a Man session, whatever the case might be, you take a little something, the investment in the end is going to be worth it. You know, the return is going to be enormous. And that's how you develop and become a better individual, is over time. So time will cure them. Right now, youth is going to prevail, you know, ego, male, but it should work out for them, it should.
It's actually kind of related. I was asking, like, it seemed for you, learning toughness and tenderness was kind of like an experience thing. You experience what Marine Corps, like, family struggles and that sort of thing. And my question was, is that how it always happens? Or are there, like, people you can sit down and talk to and they'll get it? Or is it always you have to go through something to get it?
I mean, I wouldn't want to make a broad statement like, yeah, that is the way it always happened, or it'd be kind of bold, but I would say definitely time and experience, I think, and encounters will bring that about. You know what I'm saying? I mean, even as recent as when I left these youngsters, when I left Strong Thurman High School, you know, I'm a grown man at that point in time, fully developed, know that I'm leaving. The detachment I had from those kids brought me to tears. You know, and that was something that you never would have said, something I would never have admitted. You know, here I was in front of my own kids out there who, I'm assumingly, looked up to me as a leader, but the attachment, the tenderness I developed for, you know, a Jessica or a Cameron and the connection, I didn't want to leave them. I mean, by the time it come, I was rotating. I had a, you know, a different job opportunity here at home instead of 3 hours a day where they live from here, round trip. But the situations dictated that, you know, in my life, you know, the scenarios. I was like most people. I was indoctrinated in how a male should act, what a male should be. And I bought into that whole theory. You know, it sounded good, it felt good. You know, I mean, if you could get to a point where you had some type of physical dominance, you know, when I was coming through high school, you know, if I was a $185, $190, 30 years ago, that was a big kid. Today, that's a mini miles. You know, the kids over at drill, I was there like, you know, 300-pound linemen, you know, so I would have been, but at that time, you know, I was a big kid in relation to high school kids, and I rode with some guys that thought they were pretty tough, you know, and we had the motorcycles, and so that image I bought into 100%, and it became who I was. But marrying my wife was the chance, the opportunity that changed it. Having our kids change that opportunity. Serving in combat and just being so thankful to God that I made it home and touch American soil taught me things differently. Guys I served with, that when we come back there in wheelchairs and on crutches and thinking, why not me? Why them and not me? You know, it humbles you. And then those encounters. So can a person sit down and get it at one session? I think it's a great platform for them. I think that it could help. You know, I don't know if anybody will walk out here tonight seeing toughness and tenderness differently, but I think the exposure to knowledge, as you all know, readers are leaders. I'm sure you guys do that here in college, and the more exposure you get, the better you are, I think. I don't know if that answers your question, sir. Yes, sir.
You talked a little bit about being a teacher and seeing kids not exhibiting that toughness, the standing up for what they believe in, that you like to see. Do you have a story of when you saw a student do the right thing and do that tough, show that toughness?
Yeah, sure. There are students who do the right thing. In that regard, I have had kids where I work. There's if you're familiar with the Columbia area, there's a home right down the road called Edward Home. It's not far down that road, and we have several young men in my program that live in that home, and because of the unfortunate part, the size of their stature, and in their home, they're sometimes mistreated. And I had another kid came to me and said, this young man is being bullied when we're at lunch, when we're down there, but he's not saying anything about it because he was fully intimidated. And but I kind of want my name left out of it. I really don't. He said, but this is happening. And this kid was withdrawn in school. The regular was a good kid. And when we did some research and social worker got into it, it was a fact. It really was taking place. So yeah, kids do the right things. And it happens often, probably more often than you would think. I'm just saying it's not every day. I see more negative than I see positive, but kids do the right thing. These youngsters that I taught here years ago, apparently they did the right thing. They're here in college and they're on the right track, and they make a lot of positive impact in the community where we live out there. So yes, I have seen that. It does happen. Not as frequent as I would like, and that's why I love to be a man. These young men have the courage, have the toughness to create a program like this and stand in face of the university and say, hey, you know what? We need to bring our masculinity back to the table. We as men need to restore our rightful place. We as men need to do the things we need to do. And being physically tough is not the only way of being tough. I promise you, that'll all go away in time. What's up here goes down here and out here. So you can be this beast and you're tough, but it's going to all move and shift on you. So that can't be the only toughness because it will find its way out of your life in time. But if you're a good, solid, tough individual, you will impact the world forever. You can impact the world forever. And when these gentlemen are gone, I don't know if the program will still be here, but I came to the one a few weeks ago you guys had. I enjoyed it. I'd like to come again. I think it's just a good thing that you all have won. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
How do you think tenderness and has changed, especially compared to when you were our age?
How do I think tenderness is changing? Well, I have sons that are probably relatively your ages. They're 19 to 23, so they're probably on the spectrum of where most of you are. How has tenderness changed from when I was? I think the one thing, awareness is there. I think that's the number one thing. These gentlemen having the foresight and vision to bring an awareness. When I was coming up, it really wasn't awareness. It was just simply, it was. And mind you, I grew up in a small rural town, Alabama, so the thinking wasn't all that great anyway. But these gentlemen at the university level are broadening your depth. So I think awareness is here today. I think tenderness taking on multiple definitions, not just what you might read or some of the extracts that I pulled out of definitions that I've seen online. We do that. We take things out of the context or a sound bite, and say, men don't cry, be tough, don't be, and I was going to determine, don't be a sissy, don't be a girl or whatever, that was the term. We take things out of the context like that, but that's not what being tender has nothing really to do with that. That's just one facet of tenderness. I don't know if that answers your question, sir. My own time. Anyone else? I think I stayed safely within your range.
Let's have a round of applause.